intentions.
Eric, can you be specific about when you met Rockefeller, how it happened in these discussions?
I met Rockefeller through a female attorney I knew who called me up one day and said, one of the Rockefellers would like to meet you. I had made a video called Mad as Hell, and he'd seen the video and wanted to meet me and knew I was running for governor of Nevada. So sure, I'd love to meet him. And I met him and I liked him, and he was a very, very smart man. And we used to talk and share ideas and thoughts. And he's the one who told me 11 months before 9/11 ever happened that there was going to be an event. Never told me what the event was going to be, but there was going to be an event. And out of that event, we were going to invade Afghanistan to run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We were going to invade Iraq, to take over the oil fields, establish a base in the Middle East, and make it all part of the New World Order. And we go after Chavez in Venezuela. And sure enough, later 9/11 happened, and I remember he was telling me how how you're gonna see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places, and there's going to be this war on terror, which is no real enemy, and the whole thing is a giant hoax, but it's a way for the government to take over the American people.
He told you it was going to be a hoax.
Oh yeah, there's no question. The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one world government run by the banking industry, run by the bankers, and they're doing it in sections. The European currency, the euro, and the European Constitution is one part of it. Now they're trying to do it in America with the North American Union, right? And they want to create a new currency called the Amero, right? And the whole agenda is to create a one world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is given me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
And that chip's connected to a database that has your purchasing records, what you do, what
everything,
you sell.
Everything is in there, And so they want a one world government controlled by them, everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips, and they control people, and you become a slave, you become a serf to these people. That's their goal, that's their intentions.
Eric, can you be specific about when you met Rockefeller, how it happened in the
Aldous Huxley, 1931, quote, "There will be, in the next generation or so, a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude, and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak, producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies, so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it, because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods. And this seems to be the final revolution." Zbigniew Zabrensky worked in the Carter administration, just passed recently. This is from Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technocratic Era, 1970. The technocratic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date, complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. Shortly, the public will be unable to reason or think for themselves. They will only be able to parrot the information they've been given on the previous night's news. Zbigniew Zabrensky. Chip is loaded with more than 5 billion transistors and boasts more than 250 million synapses or programmable logic points. This is how deep the technology goes. Ray Kurzweil, futurist. By the time we get to the 2040s, we'll be able to multiply human intelligence a billionfold. That will be a profound change that's singular in nature. Computers are going to keep getting smaller and smaller. Ultimately, they will go inside our bodies and brains and make us healthier, make us smarter. And by the 2030s, the non-biological portion of our intelligence will predominate. Ray Kurzweil. Healthcare Act. Obamacare in the 1,000 pages in the U.S. Healthcare Bill is a non-discussed Subtitle C11, Section 2521, National Medical Device Registry, which states its purpose as provides the framework for making the United States the first nation in the world to require each and every one of its citizens to implant in them a radio frequency identification microchip for the purpose of controlling who is or who isn't allowed medical care in their country.
And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one that has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666.
Anyone who takes the mark is immediately thrown into the lake of fire. There's no grace. There's no mercy. It's just, you've got the mark, bam, you're in a lake of fire.
But guess what? The future is now. Not only does this technology already exist, but it's already being developed and implemented at a rapid and accelerated pace as the technological elite finally begin to bridge the gap between our digital and physical identities.
A system touted as a national security necessity is being used to build a database where the biometric identity of millions of Americans will be gathered and stored.
We're meeting with the president in order to formulate legislation that would require every person in the United States of America who is employed to carry a biometric identification card with them.
And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads.
To understand where this technology is headed, all you have to do is basically empty out your pockets. Eventually, developers want to replace everything that's in your wallet, your ID, your credit cards, the keys to your car, even one day, your passport.
This is non-GPSable. However, there is just as much interest from parents with young kids that want to be able to implant their children with a GPS chip.
While now it's just buying snacks and opening doors, the opportunities are truly endless for this controversial chip.
We're going to be responsible. We're going to be respectful with what we're going to do.
And developers are already working on new applications for these chips as we speak. One of them told me to come back tomorrow, and he'd be able to program the chip to turn on the lights and play music. Another developer said someday it could be used by doctors to just scan your hand, and your complete medical history would be available to them.
The chips are implanted in employees' hands and can be used to pay for garbage food near the multiple break rooms and the food dispensers. It is a marketing stunt. Yeah.
And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name.
The president put in a lot of money in the stimulus package to advance medical records so that if you have the chip, you can carry the records with you. They can stick it in a computer. They can know all your situations.
They'll have a GPS chip in there so that they can measure everybody, every instant, no matter where they go.
Your ID card would have either your fingerprint, your thumbprint on there, or it would have a reading of the veins in the back of your...
Hey folks, welcome to another video from plaintruth.info. The last couple videos I've been getting into some real darkness, and I'm going to cover even more darker stuff today, or if there's more dark. But we need to get this out, shine lights into it. All of you seem to be really enjoying the work as far as just bringing out the darkness, because we have to get into the darkness. We have to take a look at what's being controlling over us and understand who the controlling powers are, how they're controlling us, how they've been controlling us and how we can stop them from controlling us. This is all about enslavement, as I'm going to get into today, and it's through technology, as they said a long time ago they were going to do, and this is what they're doing. So it's not like it's a surprise, but the news about chipping a hand is what got me started on this, but it goes much deeper than skin deep, folks, much deeper. So let's get into it. So there's a vid, on my Taboo blog back from 2014. These silent weapons for quiet wars we'll get into in a sec. The TPP, Agenda 21, Global Governance 2045, transhumanism, CRISPR technology, cloning celebrities. Let's get into it all and just get this all out so we can talk about it. It's really happening. So I want to start with a Martin Luther King quote. Some of us who have already begun to break the silence of the night have found that calling to speak is often a vocation of agony. But we must speak. We must speak with all humility that is appropriate to our limited vision, but we must speak. And I'll add to that another quote of his. Sometimes silence becomes betrayal. So that's why I speak out. All right, so a report from Iron Mountain came out, I believe, in 1966 on the possibility, desirability of peace, okay? So it was an anonymous who came it out from a special studies group, and once you'll learn about the powers in charge, they use very simple names. Now, there's also other documents out called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, which details much of the same thing. And again, the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars was said to be found in a computer disk drive and uploaded and shared. So, take that for what it's worth. But so the Special Studies Group, here's their premise. Here's their statement. Quote, war is not, as widely assumed, primarily an instrument of policy utilized by nations to extend or defend their expressed political values or their economic interests. On the contrary, it is itself the principal basis of organization in which all modern societies are constructed. The common proximate cause of war is the apparent interference of one nation with the aspirations of another. But at the root of all ostensible differences of national interest lie the dynamic requirements of the war system itself for periodic armed conflict. Readiness for war characterizes contemporary social systems more broadly than their economic and political structures which it subsumes. A possible surrogate for the control of potential enemies of society is the reintroduction, in some form consistent with modern technology and political process, of slavery. The development of a sophisticated form of slavery may be an absolute prerequisite for social control in a world at peace. Whose peace? Quote, military spending can be said to furnish the only balance wheel with sufficient inertia to stabilize the advance of economies. The fact that war is wasteful is what enables it to serve this function in lives. And the faster the economy advances, the heavier this wheel must be. What are we seeing with Trump now? War on war. All right, so also this gross pollution of the environment can eventually replace the possibility of mass destruction by nuclear weapons as a principal apparent threat to the survival of species. Again, nuclear weapons may or may not be real. We don't know. Poisoning of the air and the principal sources of food and water is already well advanced, and at first glance would be promising in this respect. Remember, this is written in 1966, folks. It constitutes a threat that can only be dealt with through social organization and political power. But from present indications, it will be a mental pollution, however severe, will be sufficiently menacing enough on a global scale to offer a possible basis for solution. However, the mere modifying of existing programs for deterrence of pollution could speed up the process enough to make the threat credible much sooner. This is geoengineering they're talking about. Okay, so what we're seeing here is just continued crackdown. This was a protest against Trump, and they went into everybody's phones now, and now people are being charged 75 years in prison for what they said on their phones and stuff after they busted up a group here with 100 cell phones and defendants under arrest and confiscated them. Can't have laptops. Your privacy is going away. Biometric IDs to get on the airplane. Soon there's going to be vaccines. So we're going to have to be making choices, but the reason I'm doing this is because I want it to be informed choices of where we can go to and what we need to prepare for. So this has been going on for a very long time. That was 1966. And getting back to our controlling government, as I said, the silent weapons for quiet wars, it's the soft power being used from TV programming to vaccinations to fluoride in drinking water, and aerosol spraying of our skies might be used in the silent kill for control and depopulation of the planet. There will be 13 regional zones within the former U.S. under North American Union, which will include Canada and Mexico. That's when they tried to come out with the Amero back in 2008 under a currency called the Amero. Just like the European Union will also be the Indo-Asia Union. This is their long-term strategies and plans, folks. And then they document it with all the Agenda 21, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Codex Alimentarius, and all the rest. And then here's one more quote I want to read before we move on. This is from Andrew Gavin Marshall, The Global Economic Crisis, the Great Depression of the 21st Century. There is a transitional ruling class, a superclass that agrees on establishing a world government. They already have a world government, so I disagree with that. Your debt follows you everywhere in the world. We're under a one world financial government. Why aren't we under a one world rest of the government? The middle class is targeted for elimination because most of the world has no middle class, and to fully integrate and internationalize a middle class would require industrialization and development in Africa and certain places in Asia and Latin America. The goal of the superclass is not to lose their wealth and power to a transitional middle class, but rather to extinguish the notion of a middle class and transitionalize a lower, uneducated, labor-orientated class through which they will secure ultimate wealth and power. Look what's happening in the middle class in the United States with massive student debt, massive prime card debt, massive home debt. Everybody's in massive debt. They're getting rid of the middle class, folks. That's what this is saying. Quote, the global economic crisis serves these ends as whatever remaining wealth of the middle class holds is in the process of being eliminated, and as the crisis progresses, the middle classes of the world will suffer, while a great percentage of lower classes on the world, poverty-stricken even prior to the crisis, will suffer the greatest, most probably leading to a massive reduction in population levels, particularly in the undeveloped or third world states. Well, I think it's going to happen to everybody. But anyway, so Agenda 21, I'll put this in the show notes. Here's the biodiversity plan to move everybody off the rurals and into the cities, stack them and pack them. United Nations is behind all this. But here's Agenda 21. Here's their implementation chart. And you can see how much they're progressing along their scale. I highly recommend this book, Behind the Green Mask by Rosa Koire, if you want to understand more about their long-term agendas and plans. The weather's going to make a difference in this all, and they're controlling it. So anyway, it's just, I wanted to bring this to your awareness, but I wanted to move on and just talk about more of the society, what's happening. Here we see that sperm counts in the West are plunging by 60%, July 25th. This is due to the Epicite Monsanto that just merged with Bayer Pharmaceuticals for the pharmacology company from hell. Epicite was bought. It's a spermicide, reducing cell count, cell phones. All the silent weapons they talked about for quiet wars in 1966 is being implemented. We can see it going on.
For one example of many, in 2001, a small California biotech company called Epicite patented a product, patented a gene, which causes both men and women who eat it, in the form of any product, to produce antibodies to sperm. If the men eat the Epicite gene, they produce antibodies to their own sperm, rendering them irreversibly sterile. If women eat the Epicite gene, when they have intercourse, their bodies produce antibodies to the sperm that has been deposited, and they become infertile through the destruction of the sperm. Now, DuPont and Monsanto formed a joint venture, purchased the Epicite firm, and, quote, commercialized the Epicite gene. Do you want to know if the food that you're eating contains the Epicite gene? Sure you do. How about the food that your children are eating, or your grandchildren? Sure you do. But the FDA, the Fraud and Death Administration, has made sure that under current laws, it is illegal for you to have that information.
Technology is much more advanced than you and I know. Nanotechnology is $1 trillion business. Now, this is from a company that was founded by a guy in Sausalito, California, and what he created was a clone bank for pets. First commercial pet gene bank and cloning services. Opened up in 2001. And as you can see, it funded the production of the first clone cat in 2001 and pet cloning services in 2004, where they take a pet bank so they could issue tissues. Well, it ended up closing, but I wanted to bring this to your attention because cloning is real. They take tissue, they clone it. It's just reproduction now. They've cracked the code of the human genome. And so that's what this is talking about. And I wanted to bring your attention that there is cloning going on. It's been going on for a long time. So here, let's listen to rapper B.O.B., who got on Gawker.com about 1.5 years ago and started talking flat earth. But he also brought up celebrity cloning, and that got me looking into this. But listen to what he has to say. Whether he's credible or not, you determine. He is a flat earther and bringing it out. And the next night, Neil deGrasse Tyson got on Comedy Central channel and debunked B.O.B. You know, why would he even be the top NASA astrophysicist paying attention to B.O.B. if it wasn't a psyop, folks? So take it with a grain of salt, but this is what he's saying about celebrity cloning. I just found it very interesting.
Like, I just found out about it a couple months ago, and I was scared as fuck. When I first found out about cloning, I mean, I was fucking terrified. Like, supernatural shit was happening around my house. I was jumping out of my sleep, seeing shit. I got all types of knives and guns hanging out of my mattress and my pillows and shit. Like, I had to beef up my security. I was really scared for my life. I literally had to face the fear of death. I thought that when I spoke out about cloning, they were gonna kill me. Like, I swear to God. A lot of people that found out about this cloning stuff find it very frightening. And yes, it is scary. And a lot of that fear comes from the fact that we've been programmed to believe that we're the only sentient beings on the planet. I mean, you can see this for yourself. I also get asked a lot, am I a clone? From my understanding, Donald has seen a clone of me in the cloning center. I am memory suppressed. However, I do have memories of what fit the description of the cloning center and the arena. Some people say, are you controlled opposition? Why are you just now talking about cloning? Why are you just not speaking up on these things? You're right to think that, but take this into consideration. If you're familiar with my song Missing, Dr. Aiden, The Watchers, my New Black mixtape, you know that this is not my first time speaking out. I'm just now learning about cloning. On mama. The first time that I contacted Donald, there was a tremendous amount of interference. I mean, the footage got distorted. There were helicopters and planes and shit flying over my house. Airplanes. That song was written and produced before I ever got a hold of it. It was actually intended for Lupe. Y'all gotta understand how this shit work in this industry. Like, this shit is all set up. Like, talk to Lupe about airplanes. He'll tell you. Shouts out to Lou. And also, too, y'all need to pay attention to these other celebrities when they're leaving hints. They're leaving clues all over the place. Everybody can't talk. Everybody can't talk because, you know, they got kids or, you know, they made some type of agreement. But pay attention. Everybody who's in this shit or who's in this industry or who has a clone is not evil or malicious. Some people just got born into this shit, like me. So, I'm still here alive.
CRISPR. The technique is revolutionary, and like all revolutions, it's perilous. CRISPR goes well beyond anything that the Aslamar Conference discussed. It could at least allow genetic researchers to conjure up everything anyone has ever worried they would. Designer babies, invasive mutants, species-specific bioweapons, and a dozen other apocalyptic sci-fi tropes. It brings with it all new rules for the practice of research in the life sciences. But no one knows what the rules are or who will be the first to break them. So that gets you thinking. And then here's this article just coming out yesterday, or a couple days ago. A future of genetically engineered children is closer than you think. It's in the liberal magazine, Mother Jones. They speak in their little terms of the first step is a no-brainer. So they start talking about all the diseases that are going to be fixed, how great it's going to be, and what they're doing now. But what I want to introduce you to is the invention of CRISPR technology. I'll look up again the name CRISPR, but it's a technology that allows scientists to program a protein to change specific sequences of your DNA within a cell that gives us the ability to edit the human genome. We could change the bad code into the HTT gene of an embryo back to normal version. Now, this goes hand in hand with what I just published about the new living cancer cell coming out by Novartis, where they're taking out your T cells and you're putting in programmable genes and an on and off switch and putting it back into your immune system T cells. If that isn't creepy enough, this goes hand in hand with the CRISPR technology. It's transhumanism. Here we go. Okay. So as much as 100% or 10% of the population carries genes that put them at risk for disorders such as sickle cell anemia. And I'll put the video in the links of the living cancer cell, but what they're saying, it's a preventative cancer gene. So everybody's going to have to get one because it's preventative, right? All the insurance companies, this is how they do it. So they're saying there's going to be risk, or they're saying you have to do it. And its development is to free humanity from painful diseases and worried about the creepy places worried about the creepy places it could take us. But CRISPR wasn't ready for prime time. It fixed some of the cells in the embryos, but not all of them. Oops. And also caused some, quote, off-target, new term, mutations in other genes. But then in July, researchers at Oregon Health and Science University, kids working on it, fixed genetic diseases in dozens of viable embryos without any unintended effects. Suddenly, human gene editing was real. Really. It's been going on a lot longer than that, folks. This is just them informing us that we're way developed and you can't stop us. To go on, the technology can go awry by some making mutations in other genes, and there are moral issues. Quote, sometimes I feel we're not on a slippery slope, we're flying off a cliff, said Marcy Donofsky, executive director of the Center for Genetics and Society. The Center for Genetics and Society says we're flying off a cliff. Q Gattaca, the 1997 film about a dystopian society in which people are genetically engineered and natural children are considered inferior, she fears that once we alter genes that can cause disease, we'll alter other genes too. And who's to say what is a disease and what isn't? Good point. Once we start going down the line, which we already have, we're accepting a story that tells us that some people are genetically superior to others. We're in a world of genetic haves and have-nots. Parents who have the money will feel like they need to keep up. Fertility clinics will jump right on board. When I asked a prominent Stanford bioengineer Drew Endy if he believed we'd soon be designing our heirs, he said, we already are. It's happening and everybody's happy about it. But here's Senator Backus, who wrote Obamacare. He praises the head of largest healthcare company in the country for literally writing Obamacare. But here's what I want to get into. Microchip included in affordable hair. Now remember, they're coming out with euthanasia now and whatnot in California, and they're starting with, I'm choosing to die. See how this works? Here's the actual language used in the Affordable Care Act on chipping on all plans. So I'll let you get into this. I'll include this in the show notes. You can see how tiny these microchips are. There's literally just tens of thousands of them. Nanobots replacing neurons, as I spoke about. The nanorobot will replace human nerve cells with artificial nerve cells. This means these artificial devices with RFID can take over your brain with remote biocommunication, aka Wi-Fi. The basic idea consists of a set of nanowires tethered to electronics in the main catheter, such as they will spread out in a bouquet arrangement in a particular portion of the brain's vascular system, gets into the blood-brain barrier. Such arrangement could support a very large number of probes in the millions. Each N-wire is used to record very securely electrical activity of a single or small group of neurons without invading the brain parenchyma. All right, so here's a little video of what the nanobots do, how they work. This is inside our blood-brain. This can be smarted out of smart dust. This can be put in our food systems, our liquid systems. No one would know it. No one would even care that this is going on. But this, they are telling us, is going on. This is happening in real time. Now watch these tether to the neuron. This is neurons are in our brains. This is communication. These are called neuron synapse replacers. They get in between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of our brains. and they interrupt the communication. They alter our feelings. They get in immune systems. They have read-write technology. This is what I covered in 3 hours on my touchless torture video, which I'll include in the show notes. And this is designed for all of us. I don't care what your religion is. So let's get more into the hand sensation that's going on. But just one more just to drive home the point. The chip is loaded with more than 5 billion transistors and boasts more than 250 million synapses or programmable logic points. This is how deep the technology goes.
And interestingly, as you say, you got tons of people emailing you about it. I got dozens of emails and tweets about this story. People are going crazy about this story as if it's something new, which is interesting. It tells me a couple of things. One, this is a PR campaign. They want to shove this idea in the public's face. And yeah, a lot of the public will recoil with horror at it. But that's part of the indoctrination. That's how you get started into it. You shove it in people's faces and everyone talks about it. And eventually people start to go, well, maybe it's not such a bad idea. That is the process of indoctrination. And that's how these things get entered into the public consciousness. And just to top off our little blast from the past, let's not forget our good friend Brian Williams back in 2007 anchoring an NBC program on the year 2017. Where they introduced the idea that by the year 2017, it won't be so uncommon to have a little microchip implanted in you so that, if you get hurt and you go to the hospital, well, they'll have your medical records right there. It'll be great. That's the year 2017, folks. It's been implanted in your consciousness for at least a decade, brought to you by Mr. Fake News himself, Brian Williams. Brian Williams, yeah, that's his name, right? The key is voluntary. They're going to make you want to get it. It'll be the cool thing to do. It'll be the iPhone of the next generation. What, you don't have a chip yet? Oh my God, you're so behind the times. That's the way it's going to be brought to the public. Not by the point of a gun, not by making people do it, but by getting people to want to do it. And stories like this are the first step in that indoctrination process.
I think it can control everything. I gave an example earlier that when you get pulled over, you just stick out your hand and a police officer will ask for a license and registration and scan your hand. You don't have to carry anything.
It sounds like science fiction, placing a microchip under the skin to get you in your door, to start your car, or maybe give your doctor your medical history.
Or what if your child were to disappear? Would you be willing to place a chip in your child if it might help them bring them home?
James, our second segment this week is another sort of police state two-parter, and the first part was easily the most submitted story to Media Monarchy this last week, and I think it was probably a similar situation for Corbett Report as well. It also makes the Wisconsin-based company the first U.S. enterprise to implant RFID microchips. Now, there will be no requirement to have these chips implanted, and it is completely voluntary.
Perhaps the first American business implementation, but you pointed out two important things there. One, it's all voluntary, guys. You don't have to do it. And two, this is essentially a PR campaign. That's what it is. I mean, it's a gimmick, really. Oh, yeah, you can buy things from the crap food dispenser in the company canteen. It's ridiculous.
So, Mr. Corbett, this is anything but a marketing campaign, anything but voluntary. So the company for my 32 chip, the number 3. See how the number 3 is prominently displayed there? It's all part of the marketing psyops. And 3 plus 2 equals 5. And I'll get into the 23andMe, which is the reverse of 32, and what that's about. But let's get into the geometria of the number 5, which is 3 plus 2. And what it means is the spiritual meaning of number 5 is the number of manifestation. It's the number of 5 elements: earth, air, water, fire, and ether. Within the 5 elements are all the components necessary for creative manifestation. 5 is the free-spirited creative number. It aligns to freedom, to feel the freedom to pursue that which fills your heart in purposeful joy and bliss. 5 is a doing number representing faith in action, having mindful connection to the synergy of the forces of nature.
If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out and in the presence of the Lamb.
Researchers are developing sheets of ultra-thin, ultra-flexible electronics that can stick to your body.
These electronic skins, or e-skins, can bend when you flex your elbow and twist when you rotate your wrist. Researchers are just beginning to imagine all the medical innovations that could come from these e-skins.
More now of our special coverage here tonight, life in the U.S. in 10 years' time. By that time, there may be all kinds of new ways to safeguard and identify all those things that make each of us unique, our faces, even our fingerprints, even our eyes.
Science fiction 20 years ago, but a biometric reality today.
The technology is based on answering one simple question. Am I who I say I am?
Already, fingerprints and iris scans verify passenger identities at airports. Within 10 years, that technology may be even more widespread. And look for more complex facial recognition programs that scan a crowd of thousands looking for a single terrorist. Today's facial recognition software starts with the eyes. Then it maps out the contours of the face and compares that against a database of millions, a database that's growing by the day. What's next? At the University of Bath in England, researchers predict big changes for consumers.
I think it is possible to free us completely of our wallets and keys using biometric technology, if that's what people want in 10 years' time.
In fact, it's already here. The latest home security locks use fingerprints to control deadbolts. And at the Jewel Osco grocery store in Chicago, some customers pay using their fingerprints. No paper or plastic.
You don't really need anything other than your hand, and you already got that with you.
So will future department stores scan our irises, like in the movie Minority Report, then offer products catered to who we are?
Hello, Mr. Yakamoto. Welcome back to the Gap.
Experts say that technology is here now. The challenge is to safeguard our privacy in a brave new world.
Be able to find that individual if that person wanders away. But I certainly would, and I think it's a coming thing. And the problem is that medical technology is so far behind that RFIDs are going to really be the impetus in order for us to get new technology in the medical field that's going to help people improve their quality of care. And that's what it's all about.
And I'm sorry, sir, did you just say you would get one implanted in your arm?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Because of the lack of technology. There 98,000 people died last year because of mistakes in hospitals and clinics across America. And a good share of those mistakes could have been prevented by technology. RFID is at the cutting edge of new technology, is going to help to improve the quality of health and the quality of care for all Americans.
If I could turn to Secretary Thompson, just ask a quick question about your old job. Secretary Thompson, you were quoted last December as saying you have to assume that sometime in the future one of our countries, meaning the larger developed countries, is going to be hit by a bioterrorism attack. I assume you saw an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday detailing failures, at least thus far, in developing with the U.S. government's help new vaccines and drugs to counter biological threats. And I'm curious to get your reaction to that.
Well, I think the story is somewhat correct. But you got to realize that the United States was starting from nothing.
Like the Tuskegee experiment, for one, which was the most heinous crime. Well, until now, you know.
Yeah. Until now.
Yeah, until now.
But this hasn't been revealed yet, or people don't accept it yet. This kind of no-touch torture and silent death. But yeah, I think the program has been expanded since then to include all classifications of human beings. This is worldwide. I just did an interview with a major news agency for South Korea, and they're saying it's rampant there. Russia has a huge population. China has a huge population.
But in the future, every square inch of every city will be alive with intelligence. Because every street and every building will have a network of microcomputers built right into them. Dr. Chris Piester calls it smart dust.
A smart dust particle, or mote, is a wireless sensor with sensing, computation, communication, and power in one package.
These all-in-one microcomputers will be small, very small.
The size of a mote today is about the size of a grain of rice. And we've shown that we can make the circuitry small enough and light enough that eventually it will be possible to make things that are on a sub-millimeter size scale.
Tiny specks of computer smart dust will form a vast invisible network that can help manage the infrastructure of even the largest city.
smart cities in the future will take this low power, inexpensive, small technology and basically distribute it everywhere.
But Smart Dust will also allow buildings and streets to recognize you and respond accordingly.
I think increasingly the environment will respond to who we are and adapt in consequence.
The city will know where you are if you want it to.
Your workplace will know you. Smart Dust at the entrance will boot up your computer. And Smart Dust embedded in the elevator doors will automatically ring your floor.
Smart Dust is going to sense the environment and allow us to improve the way that we live our lives.
No matter how we live in the future city, it will be radically different.
Okay, but
Okay, so wait. So it's really true. So what this means is that becomes my first superpower. I really want this superpower. It means that my arms are like wires, my hands are like alligator clips. When I touch my phone, my computer, my door, my car, I'm authenticated in. First superpower. Like, I want that.
so we're not shipping that right away.
Yeah, no. We're not shipping that right away. But it
But
sounds like...
this is FDA cleared?
So here's the thing. This is not science fiction. This pill was actually made by a company called Proteus, and they've developed it for medical applications. That pill has been CE stamped and cleared by the FDA. You can take 30 of those per day for the rest of your life.
And then what happens? Does your heart
Nothing.
beat change? Does your...
We can just tell that you've taken the pill.
You will find quite soon that electrical signals start to be picked up by the chips. The brain cells connect not only to the chips, but they also start to put out feelers to each other. They connect to each other, they connect to the chip. You get a biodigital device. I'm telling you history, my friends. You tell me the future. These devices have been grown for the last 5 to 10 years. So could we have a human brain that can go online? This is history. We already did it in animals. We have rats and mice that can think electrically. They produce currents and thoughts which go from one mouse to another. The mouse says, I'm thirsty, and a signal electronically goes to another mouse in another laboratory saying, please, can you give me a drink? If the other mouse agrees to give the first mouse a drink, he gets some food. We are living in a strange world. I am not saying that you're going to have a plug-in module for mathematics in the future or language. I'm just saying we are entering new territory for the future.
Inside the brain, here are human nerve cells growing onto the surface of an RFID type chip. Human brain cells don't need to be taught to do this. They are genetically programmed to work with computers. In fact, they love computers. Here's an example. Here is a chip. There's the chip. You put the brain tissue on and it organizes itself. The brain cells work their way in and they start communicating with each other and with the brain of the PC. So it means we can have thinking computers. Maybe 10 trillion of these devices every few years entering the environment. You're talking about total knowledge of consumer behavior watched in real time and huge business opportunities. Why? Because it means we can then start to predict human behavior.
Now, if you want to understand the agenda behind, there was a brave lady.
Now we have the head of PayPal saying that they want brain chips to replace passwords. Oh my goodness, huge conspiracy theorist here. This is PayPal's global head of developer evangelism. Jonathan LeBlanc is pushing implantable brain chips as a replacement for passwords, but he insists that such technology must be made to fit inside cultural norms before it is accepted by the general public. So obviously we can expect a huge psyop coming to get people to accept that this is culturally normal. But listen to some of the options here, he says. This is in a presentation called Kill All Passwords. LeBlanc admits that the future of authentication security is going to get creepy, and traditional passwords are going to be phased out due to their innumerable security flaws, but he's envisioning brain chips to measure thought patterns so that childhood memories could be invoked by the user to unlock their computer. So no longer having to remember who your first boyfriend was or the name of the street that you lived on. Now these brain chips are just going to scan your memories to give you access to your vehicle, your computer, to file your taxes, all of these things. And LeBlanc says that realistically, the ones that are going to succeed, whether it's embeddable, ingestible, injectable, or what have you, these are the ones that are going to play into cultural norms, the ones that are going to meet the demands of the populace overall and not be creepy. So even though they seem creepy today, in the future, they will not be creepy. They'll be culturally normal. Now, this is also echoed by Google, who in 2013, it was revealed that they were working on an ingestible microchip that would turn on a user's entire body into a biological authentication system for your cell phone, cars, doors, and other devices. And they're also developing a wearable e-tattoo that can decipher a user's thoughts by detecting the unvocalized words in their throat. At what point in our society is any of that going to not become creepy?
Forget mobile phones. Your children and grandchildren may well want an implant instead.
You know, when we check out at the grocery store, we'll be swiping our own arm over the scanner. And that will be something we feel we can't live without.
It would be such a disadvantage to not have the implant that it essentially becomes not optional.
Let's imagine a little bit what the future might look like if I could take your stem cells and put them on a chip, or your stem cells and put them on a chip. It would be a personalized chip just for you.
And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one that has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666.
Well, Big Brother will now be taught at a school near you. Across the country, schools are finding ways to track and monitor students inside and outside the classroom. The techniques range from chips embedded in school ID cards to GPS systems installed in computers, tracking students' every move, to actual surveillance cameras. And it's happening in Texas.
Somea's material can be stretched, folded, or crumpled up like paper, but the electronics on it still work. That's why it might be useful for biomedical applications.
Had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
This is a developmental system made by MC10, and it has an antenna and some sensors embedded in it. And what we plan to do is work with them to advance a tattoo that could be used for authentication.
So apparently this actually is artificial life, and it's able to grow.
They call that the nanotechnology.
Nanotechnology, imagine that.
Smart dust. This side you can see. What's happening here is what is inside, like this. This is from inside coming out.
Okay.
And it's nothing to do with the roots. Is more the matter is changing.
Okay.
And webbing, that's what the mission. See? The little one, that's why it's fractal. You have a big one and you have a small one. And when you look at the small one deeper, you can see there is a small one on top of the small one.
Up to how many times in terms of in micro sizes can you go in?
Oh, that one I can go to 1,000 times.
Oh boy, okay.
You see?
Oh, jeez.
So
right.
Here, what's happened, he break. Okay, because for some reason, when you pick it up, the dust, or so the head of the dust break. So after that, he go all over the place. 1,000 heads go and he go on their ways.
Each one becomes one again and continues and just takes this.
And here you can see you have a glass on top of the glass. Okay, this is the lamelle, and on top of it there is another glass. So it's not my breath or something like that to make them move.
Okay. Okay, that's
Because-
actually sandwiched inside.
Yeah,
there.
yes, it's a
So
sandwich.
If it's sandwiched inside there and it's still able to move the way we saw it move,
Yeah.
then
is to collect light processed by the DNA and turn it into a readable signal. Exactly what Cara St. Louis described in her novel.
I did feel it crawling through, like it was trying to get out of my body after that. It was crawling. I would see my skin would move. It would move everywhere I had where it come down to my mouth. It was trying to get out of my body. I would even see it sometimes go right across my eye, some of it. It was trying to get out of my body after that, and it wasn't getting the energy from me, so it was dying. Okay, so I do believe that's somewhat nanotech, and that it lives off of the body's energy, bioelectric energy.
Okay, we're going to do the grape juice test here. It's like a wine test. You can use wine also, red wine. And it's the Morgellon test, Morgellons. And we got rubbing alcohol here. We're going to use that too. So when my mom here spits this grape juice on this plate here, you're going to see a lot of little creatures wiggling around in there. Okay, so go ahead. We're going to do this. Fun stuff, I'm telling you. Okay. I'll be back in 2 minutes and we'll see what we get. Get ready to spit it on that plate there. Go ahead. Oh, that's attractive. Oh, nice. Oh my God, look at that crap. And that's not in the grape juice, by the way. We already did that test. This stuff is fibers and whatnot. Okay, go ahead. We're going to pour some little bit of rubbing alcohol. It's going to bring these things to screaming. Now you can really see them.
Yeah, I know you can see
them. No. Oh yeah, that's so funny. I'm in the Twilight Zone as
A
usual.
whole string of them.
Oh God, this is even worse. We did it the first time and it was bad, but this is even worse.
Yeah, you can see what it does. What you have inside of you.
We all have
Your
this,
mouth.
folks. So the spraying is happening. It's over our heads today, as usual.
Each of them has a life expectancy of up to 100 years in the environment. They need no battery or power source externally because they are powered by the electromagnetic radiation in the air that we breathe.
I'm going to tape this time. And so this is what we did before. This is what this is. This is the wine spit test where you rinse your mouth out and then you take grape juice and you hold it in your mouth and you spit it out into a petri dish. Well, what we did is we used the zeolite, the zeoforce. This stuff says it cages this stuff stuff that's in these chemtrails, it's in our bodies. Okay, so then now Chris is just going to pour in a little bit of that little tiny bit of the 91% alcohol. Watch, the stuff is alive. Watch what happens. Pour some in, just a little. Watch. Look. Look what it does.
Now you can film it up close.
Oh yeah.
That's totally freaking.
Is that freaking freaky? This is in every single one of us. This is spookier and weirder than I even want to go there.
There's a kind of an idea of how widespread this problem is in terms of numbers in our country and compared to maybe overseas?
Well, I would say that the persons who have realized what's going on are just a drop in the bucket. The persons whom I have seen being targeted are completely unaware of what's happening. So those who are complaining of this are as I said, a tip of the iceberg. I would say this is probably very, very widespread. But I can't, under the circumstances, come up with any figures. Many thousands, no doubt, are involved. But I would say that the bulk of those are running to their doctors and taking totally unnecessary prescription drugs to cure ailments that, in fact, don't exist.
After a government protocol now applied to the general civilian population?
It's difficult to pinpoint everything at this stage on the U.S. government exclusively because these are global operations.
Okay.
The pattern, the protocols are virtually identical on a global scale. So someone is overseeing the entire activity. The government obviously is complicit because otherwise these operations would not be allowed to exist. Congress recognizes that these weapons systems exist and funds them, and knows as a result of appropriate briefings what the bioeffects can be, yet they have passed no legislation prohibiting their use under unconstrained experimental circumstances. That's number one. Number two, given that these systems draw on existing power grids, it would be necessary for the FCC as a minimum and the Department of Energy as a minimum to have some oversight and control over what is going on. So obviously, with Congress, the FDA, and the Department of Energy, the FCC and the Department of Energy are knowledgeable and yet unwilling to do anything about it. So there is complicity, but the question is, whose bidding is the U.S. government allowing these operations to take place?
First of all,
are you an EPA representative?
I'm a federal agent that works for the EPA.
I have yet to hear any response back to any of my formally filed complaints.
Where's the location that the crime is occurring?
Earth. All over Earth. I mean, I personally witness in Virginia, Georgia, California, Florida, most of the United States, overseas, everywhere.
What's the crime, ma'am?
The crime is airplane pollution, which is saturating the environment, and it is detrimental. They're blocking out the sun. I have lab results, hair samples, water, soil, and blood showing high levels of strontium, aluminum, barium, mercury, lead, uranium, and other chemicals and heavy metals. Do you have a criminal division I can formally report this to?
Yes, ma'am. I actually work for the criminal division, but I'm trying to figure out what the crime actually is.
The crime is toxic aerosol spraying into the environment.
We never got to the point where if you mentioned something about a religious group that may be targeted.
Well,
and what did you mean by that?
The way let me put it this way, I'm not anxious to start a religious war. I have found over the years that the persons involved both in gang stalking, I've made it a point to get to know these people. I've had to necessarily. I'm not the type to...
You're talking about the perpetrators or the targets?
Perpetrators.
Okay.
As well as I've been drawing distinctions. And what I have found is that the perpetrators appear to belong predominantly to one particular religion, whereas the targeted individuals do not belong predominantly to that particular religion.
And what is the particular religion of the perpetrators?
Right. So at this stage, again, I'm not particularly enthused about the idea of starting a religious war, and I have challenged other...
Maybe.
There is a religious influence, but